All right, so today we're going to be taking notes on Unit 1, Day 1 for Algebra 2B. Remember, if you feel like this video is going too fast, then you can always pause it or rewind it and watch a problem over again. All right, so we're going to go through a little bit of vocabulary at first. There's some questions about comparisons between numbers. So you need to know what these three symbols mean. Make sure that you know that this is greater than, this is less than, and this is equal to. We also have the symbols greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, but when you're comparing, you have to pick one of those three. So we don't want those other two symbols. All right, the other terminology that you need to know for today is opposite and reciprocal. All right, so I'm going to do a little chart with a certain number in it, and then you need to give me its opposite and also its reciprocal. So if my original number is 5, then its opposite is negative. So opposite means one number is positive, one number is negative. So if that one's positive, this one's going to become negative. If that was originally negative, that would be positive. All right, reciprocal means take your fraction and flip it over. So even though that doesn't look like a fraction, 5 is the same as 5 over 1. So when you do the reciprocal, you're flipping it over, and that becomes 1 over 5. All right, if my original number was, let's say, 2/3, okay, or sorry, negative 2/3, then it's already negative, so my opposite would be positive 2/3. Okay, and then I want to do the reciprocal of this number. So my reciprocal is take these two numbers and switch them. Okay, so you could write negative 3 over 2. Now when you do that, some people like to put the negative 2 on the bottom, so you could say 3 over negative 2. You could also just put the negative on the outside. These are all the same. I would say that this is probably the best answer, but it doesn't really matter which one you say. All right, and the next thing is absolute value. So the definition of absolute value is a number's distance from 0 on the number line. Okay? So if I'm asking you what is the absolute value of negative 4, you're going to see this notation. That means absolute value. So if you think about the number line, here's the number 0, here's the number negative 4. How far away is negative 4 from 0? It's 4 units away, right? And so distance is always going to be positive. So the absolute value would be 4. Right? If we said, what's the absolute value of 13, you don't even have to draw it out, but we know that that is 13 units away from 0. Right? Sometimes they might ask you to do something like 5 minus 6 divided by 2, and then take the absolute value of that. So make sure that you do order of operations first. As a reminder of order of operations, I'm going to write these up here. Okay, so some people remember this as please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, but it's parentheses, then exponents, then multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. So parentheses can be like parentheses, brackets, they can be absolute value, it could be something under a square root. Exponents is like 3 squared, 2 to the 3rd, 4 to the 5th. Those are exponents. Multiplication and division, we know what that is. Make sure you go from left to right. And addition and subtraction, also make sure that you go from left to right. Okay, so in this problem, I have in my grouping symbol, I'm going to go within here. There's no exponents. And then I don't see any multiplication, but I do see division, so you need to do this first. So we've got 6 divided by 2, that's 3. Then you still need to do 5 minus 3. Which is your addition and subtraction. So you got absolute value of 2. So now it's asking you, what is the absolute value of 2? How far away is 2 from 0 on the number line? And the answer is 2. Okay, make sure that your absolute value is always positive, unless it asks you, what is the absolute value of 0? Well, how far away is that from 0? It's 0 units away. That's the only one that's not going to be positive. All right, so now we're going to continue going through the problems on this worksheet. Okay, so it says, identify the properties shown. So I didn't have room up at the top, so I'm going to write down your 3 properties that you need to know. There's the commutative property. There's the associative property. And there's the distributive property. So I think most people are familiar with the distributive property, something like 2 times x plus 3. That means to distribute. We've heard that term before, 2x plus 6. So if you see something that looks like that, that's distributive property. Commutative property, if you think about commuting back and forth to work, so doesn't matter which order you go. Like if I go to work or to home, it's still going to be the same distance. So if I add something, 1 plus 2, it's the same as saying 2 plus 1. So the order doesn't matter. Associative property is when you associate with somebody, you're grouped together. So if I have like 1 plus 2 plus 3, and I do 1 plus 2 first, versus 1 plus 2 plus 3, and I do 2 plus 3 first, this gives me 3 plus 3, which is 6. This gives me 1 plus 5, which is also 6. So my associations don't matter. All right, so if you look at these 3 problems, all right, the first one shows an example of the commutative property. Now, there is a commutative property of addition and a commutative property of multiplication. So make sure you specify. So this would be the commutative property of addition. Right, since these are adding. This one is showing me 4 times x plus 4 times 3. This is distributing the 4. So we just call that the distributive property. You don't have to say of multiplication or of addition, because really it's using both. It's multiplying and then it's adding those 2 things. All right, this one we have grouping symbols. So when you see the grouping symbols, that tells you it's the associative property. Now these are being multiplied, so this is the associative property of multiplication. All right, number 4 and 5 are related to that. It says complete each statement and state the property. So notice that it's doing 3 times x minus 3 times 4. Okay, so we need to fill that in. And it's distributing. Okay, this one is saying x plus y is the same as y plus x. So the order got changed from x to y to now y to x. So when the order switches around, that's commutative property. And since these are adding, we'll call this the commutative property of addition. All right, flip to the back of your worksheet, and we're going to continue doing more problems like these. All right, number 6. What's missing in here? 7 times 2 times 3, we're missing our 2. So this is saying 7 times 2, you do that first, then multiply by 3. Here you do 2 times 3, then multiply by 7. Since you're associating them differently, this is the associative property of, and that is multiplication. Okay. This one is saying 5 times 2, right, which we have a 5 on the outside. 5 plus 5 times 6, so there must be a 6 missing here. So they distributed the 5. 5 times 2 plus 5 times 6. So this is distributive property. All right, 2 more like that. So 7 times something is equal to 8 times 7, so the missing number must be 8. Right? This is different order, so it's commutative property of, and since these are being multiplied, we'll call it commutative property of multiplication. All right, this is adding 3 plus a plus 6, so 3 plus a plus, it must be 6. The groupings are different, so notice that they are being associated differently. So this is the associative property of multiplication. All right, in this next section we have a comparison. So you're going to decide which number is bigger. All right, you're thinking on a number line. I know sometimes the negative ones are a little tricky. So think of where would you put negative 4 on the number line. Negative 8 would be even further negative. So this is the larger number. Okay, so make sure that this symbol is facing towards the negative 4. So this would be the greater than symbol. So you would say negative 4 is greater than negative 8. Okay, when you compare this one, I think it might be easy if you use your calculator. All right, so let's figure out what is the square root of 95. Okay, so in your calculator, first you should find where the square root key is. It's above the x squared, so you have to hit second and then x squared. So that's right over here. All right, square root of 95 is about 9.75. So we're going to say this is approximately 9.75. So now you can compare them. 12 is obviously bigger than 9.75. So that would be greater than. All right, when you do number 12, this would also be another one that you can do on your calculator. So 2/7, just use the division key when you're putting in a fraction. So 2/7 is about 0.286. 3/8, just type in 3 divided by 8. That's about 0.375, or exactly 0.375. So this one is larger, so we're going to put the less than symbol. So 2/7 is less than 3/8. Okay, for 13, 14, 15, you have to actually do the absolute values first. So the absolute value of -5 is 5, and we're comparing 5 to 5, so these are actually equal to each other. All right, don't forget the absolute value means the distance away from 0. All right, how far is 6 away from 0? That's 6. How far is -12 from 0? That's 12. So 6 is actually less than 12. And then number 15, so this one is saying what is the opposite of the absolute value of 4? All right, so the absolute value of 4 is 4, but we want the opposite of that, so we're going to have -4. This side is saying what is the absolute value of -4. So how far away is -4 from 0? That's 4 units away. All right, so which number is larger? If you need to think about it on a number line, we got -4 here. Here's +4, the one that's further to the right. That one's larger. Okay, so that symbol should be facing that. So you'd say opposite of absolute value of 4 is less than the absolute value of -4. All right, and then I know we talked about making sure that you're listening to the video, so you're going to write down the secret word of the day. Okay, so the secret word of the day is leprechaun. So if you're paying attention to the video and you actually listen to it with the audio, then you should be able to write that word down.